Hello everyone, and welcome back to That Time We Woke Up in a Podcast and Had to Explain Manga, our heated adventures overanalyzing manga that we find interesting, otherwise known as the OverMangaCast. And we've read a lot of classics here on this show. We've read Dragon Ball, we've read Yu-Gi-Oh! It's time that we take a look at another seminal manga. We are going to be examining the stunning, the bizarre JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. We read chapters 1 through 24. Or I say they read chapters 1 through 24. I was off this week, and my dear co-hosts did this without me. I'm going to go sleep in a casket at the bottom of the ocean for 100 years and contemplate my revenge. Enjoy the episode, everyone.
So in the absence of Sam, Jay here, and welcome back to the OverMangaCast. That time we woke up in a podcast and had to explain manga, our heated adventures over analyzing manga we find interesting. And on this episode, we read JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Part 1, Phantom Blood, which were chapters 1 through 24, which is the Youth with Dio arc. We'll usually roll right into everyone's familiarity with the series. For myself, I had a very, I want to say, joyfully traumatic introduction to the series. This was back when I was in college as a naive freshman. I was a member of an anime club on campus, kind of. Our anime club on campus sucked, but anyway, I was affiliated with that group. And so the hot gossip was that apparently everyone was watching JoJo's or reading JoJo's, and they're like, Jay, you have to read this. At first, I was hesitant because I hadn't heard, too much information about JoJo. I just, everyone's like, you need to read it, you need to watch it, it's amazing. And so I resisted for about a month before eventually some friends in quotation marks, took me back to one of their rooms. And everyone was kind of huddled around like we usually did to watch whatever show was all the rage at the time. And they just sat me down and said, we're watching this new show. And I said, what do you mean? That was how I first got initiated to JoJo's. The anime, of course. But later on, I did end up reading a few parts of the manga. But we'll turn it over to Matt and Jacob.
Yeah, Jacob here. I had something of a similar experience. JoJo's is that kind of parody series that, half of the joke is that it pretends it isn't a parody. So if you're one of those people who's holding out on JoJo's like me and Jay have, I waited literally years before I actually broke down and watched JoJo's. The thing that prompted me was actually the YouTube channel Mother's Basement did a rundown of all of the manga references and symbolism and foreshadowing in the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure openings for the then recent anime. Part 3 had just come out, and eventually it was just a matter of I had some time on my hands. I sat down and I think I binged part 1 in about a day. I just went through it so quickly. I didn't pick up the manga until a fair amount later, but I have actually, I had already read not all of, but most of part 1. And of course, who doesn't know JoJo's memes? It was a JoJo's reference.
Then finally, Matt here. I've got a much shorter story. I think this is basically the first time I've ever read JoJo's. Now, obviously, through cultural osmosis, I'm not completely blind. But this was relatively my first reading of it. Also, finally,
when we were putting this on the reading list and you mentioned you hadn't read JoJo's, I was quite shocked.
Yeah, I just didn't read it. I had enough people around me got real into it, and I'm like, this is not quite my thing, but yeah, I know what you're thinking, valued listener. Man, that sounds like there's only 3 of them. And that's true. Sam's taking a much needed vacation this week. So we decided we'd be very good friends and read a series he very much loves and would love to talk about without him.
Yeah, something about going down to Mexico and some Aztec ruins or something. I don't know.
Hey, he's got to keep on the run from those Russian assassins he keeps dating.
That's true. But anyway, speaking of Aztec ruins, we start off with a quick little prologue chapter. Like, this is something that's persistent through all of JoJo's. It has this sort of like 1940s serial feel to it. Like, particularly the announcer. You can hear like the way that the font is and the speech bubbles. They're using the announcer voice.
Oh, yeah, no, this series drips in like late 70s, early 80s camp. Like, it is, great. Everything is cranked up to 10. It is the definition of campy. Like,
well, it's very much a parody of what shonen was immediately beforehand. And as I've mentioned a couple of times, JoJo's and Dragon Ball are contemporaries of each other. Dragon Ball is, sort of like sidestepping the time tropes, whereas JoJo is like
full on jumping into the kiddie pool. Yeah. No, jumping into the deep end. We're going to take this, as Jake said, and dial it.
Dial it up. Because that's JoJo's.
Own it. The campy.
Relative to this prologue chapter, one of the kind of nice things that, like, it wasn't until this reading of the manga that, I was, like, paying attention to it and, like, taking notes and looking through all of it, closely, that I noticed one thing that, at the very least, what we read of Phantom Blood was very good at is like it's more planned than a lot of the series that we've done, because like the stone mask is very, very well established by the time it becomes a plot point. Because this prologue chapter, what it's introducing is this Aztec stone mask that when blood gets on it, I think they're supposed to be ribs or something. They're spikes. Comes out and impales the wearer. It pierces their skull and hits certain parts of their brain to unlock the secret hidden potential of the human brain. The stone mask isn't the only thing. There are a couple of different like plot elements that will come up over the course of our reading where they acknowledge these things exist before they become imminently relevant. It's nice to see a bit more of a planned series. Again, compare it to its contemporary Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball, there is nothing planned. Absolutely nothing
planned, and the very little depth to it.
That's sort of the thing. Dragon Ball develops depth, whereas JoJo's,
you can't miss an episode. You can't miss a chapter.
I would argue JoJo's also develops depth. It definitely has a lot going on, but I'm not sure that's depth so much as playing into the genre, because you do have, every time a plot point comes up, you could skip a chapter, I'm pretty sure, because every time something relevant comes up, a character will monologue what that relevance is. Yes, that is Dio.
The thing about JoJo's is, and this is something that's really important to remember about it, it is a quality series, just generally speaking. The places that Dragon Ball goes, I feel it goes to a deeper place. But like, certainly if you were to compare part one that we did of Dragon Ball to part one we did of JoJo's, oh man, JoJo's blows it out of the water. It's really impressive. It's little things like foreshadowing the stone mask and what it actually does. Like, because we see what it does in the prologue before we head into the twilight of the 20th century. Friendly reminder: Jack the Ripper exists.
Well, it's London, so I mean we have to reference the fact that Jack the Ripper exists. That's a common trope just for
anything in this time period.
19th century London, you have to mention Jack the Ripper.
I mean, that's also a very Japanese mentality to take of like, quick, what do we know about 19th century England? Jack the Ripper? That's good.
That works.
But I will like to say my favorite part of the prologue is the Aztec leader wearing the mask. Has a little bit of his monologue. He's just like, watch as I have been stabbed through the head but have come back to life. How bizarre that is. And I'm like,
title drop. There are a couple of places where people will like noticeably use the word bizarre. Like there are other synonyms that would have made more sense, but it's like,
it's specifically bizarre. You don't understand. Yeah. They're establishing their brand.
JoJo's is really good at that.
It's not strange. It's bizarre.
JoJo's is really good at establishing its brand. Because, the other thing, one of the things that's most famous about JoJo's is the JoJo poses, and those start Right from the prologue,
I love it.
the stances that the Aztec chief takes are just so delightful.
They are.
We find ourselves at the deathbed of one Mr. Brando and his young son Dio.
Good luck telling anybody's ages.
We know that Dio is a child.
I can provide some speculation of how old he may be at this time, but it's not important.
Yeah.
He's by his father's bedside. What's really stuck out is the fact that apparently he's just like, well, my deceased wife, I have no purpose or no fond memories of the people I'm leaving behind. I'm just like very bitter old man kind of vibes going on.
We establish Dario Brando is an awful human being just in general. So
just in general. But the fact that he then instills, I don't want to say a duty onto his son, but the fact that whether it is some shred of humanity or some shred of caring about what happens to his son, if he views him as a legacy or whatnot, the fact he tells them that, hey, there was this nobleman. Does he tell him that he immediately screwed him over?
No, it specifically when he flashes back, it's showing the audience. He says, I couldn't possibly tell Dio what I had done that day. I sort of wonder if it's like, oh, my son will think less of me, which is kind of hilarious considering.
That's why I was kind of conflicted over that, because it's like he openly says essentially that, you know, my troubling wife, she's dead, and it's just kind of like everyone's obviously very disposable to him, but that shred of,
it wasn't even his wife in the flashback. It was just some, you know, random woman at a bar. Well, whatever. He probably knocked her up and ended up having to have a shotgun wedding. We know how that probably happened. Entirely possible. She's like you said, she's totally disposable.
Yeah, but I mean the fact that he shows being a garbage, despite the fact that he's a garbage human being, like that is never. He is never relieved of that ever, that we can pretty solidly claim that. The fact that he says that, hey, I want my son to have a decent life. To
never lose to anyone, I think is what he says specifically.
Yeah. Kind of like bestowing that fatherly wisdom that perhaps he's not the right person to receive it from, but the fact that he does offer that quote unquote advice to his son does show that he does, you know, somewhat have a relationship with his son, fatherly relationship.
I thought that was more so like he is just immediately conveying his dreams onto Dio because he's dying. He's just like, well, that's dumb. I can't be the richest person in the world anymore, so that's got to be your job now. A dream which Dio kind of doesn't take on, he takes on out of spite. Like, he's just like, you wanted me to be the richest person in the world? Well, your dreams were stupid, old man, but I'll do it to show you what a failure you were. Like,
yeah. Like, he's basically gonna say, I'm gonna do that and then some because you couldn't do it. And it's just right out of the gate at this point.
The flashback that Dario has on his deathbed is the first time where this comes up, and it's just something that, like, it's one of those things that you forget about JoJo's, but once you start engaging with it again, oh boy, you're reminded. This gets graphic sometimes, like, and it's like at weird intervals too. It's not like it's like super gory like something like Chainsaw Man, but like there'll be some times where they just do not cut away from violence where other stories would.
Or childhood trauma, like it's right there.
The thing that's really interesting about Dio, and this is something that gets really well established over, you know, him and our next character, JoJo's introduction, in a different, like, if Dio wasn't so unapologetically purely evil, Dio would be the hero of this story.
100%. Because he's the undergod. He's the one who literally came from nothing, had an inn with a noble family, was able to, you know, have access.
And the noble son is arrogant. He's not well-mannered. He's privileged. Like, if Dio wasn't a literal dog-kicking villain,
yes,
Dio would be the hero of this story.
Yes.
So I've got a theory. Do we know for certain Araki doesn't consider Dio the hero of this story?
I don't know for sure.
This is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, but they sure do spend a lot of time on Dio.
Because they're supposed to be almost like a foil.
Oh yeah, that's exactly what it is. I didn't like read it over super closely, but I skimmed something at the end of my copy of, I have the like really fancy hardcover because like it's JoJo's, how can you not? One of the things that Araki mentioned is that the very first of the JoJo's, when he was crafting his first protagonist, he wanted the first protagonist to be a paragon of goodness and virtue. And he said it kind of made him hard to write because I always had to keep that in my mind, that he is just like the pinnacle of goodness personified. And that doesn't give you a lot of wiggle room with the character. Whereas Dio is a fascinating son of a bitch. So it kind of makes sense that Dio gets a lot of the focus, though. You know, when we're introduced to Jonathan, Jostar, he is an interesting character in his own right. He really is a solid protagonist in spite of whatever misgivings Araki may have had when he was writing him. Like, the first thing we do is he sees someone getting bullied and he goes to try to defend that person. He promptly and soundly gets his, rear end kicked, but boy, does he try. And he doesn't care that he loses. He stopped the bullying from happening, and that is enough.
And that is noble, like a knight.
But the problem is he's a bit too noble because the person he's defending tries to thank him and he yells at her going, I didn't do this to be thanked by you. I did this because this was noble. I'm like, what?
Well, that's really the cool thing, because in a lot of ways, mentioning that Dio, if he wasn't so unapologetically evil, he'd be the main character of this story. On the other hand, because of the way that Dio is, you can see the growth that JoJo has. JoJo would have been a little turd if it weren't for the upbringing that he had.
He got knocked down to size, and that made him more noble. More pure.
You see him, he starts off as not a particularly likable person, because like poor Erina, she's like she's not even doing that much to thank him. She's just trying to be nice, and
like, thank you, and offered him. Yeah.
Over the course of our reading, you see him truly become a genuinely noble gentleman, which is a really well-crafted character arc.
Especially considering the role model he has for what a gentleman is, because Jostar Sr. is an interesting take on gentlemanly. Is
that an interesting take, or is that not so necessarily gentlemanly, but just noble? Because you have to separate gentleman and noble. Because nobles, they act nobly, but there is a side that kind of does that kind of behavior for the clout.
Yeah.
Like, look what I did. Isn't that so great and noble?
Yeah, the difference between a nobleman and a gentleman is actually a really clever and subtle distinction, because I think it's very fair to say that whether or not Lord Jostar is truly a gentleman, we don't actually see a whole lot of him.
Well, I mean, that could also be handled in the way that he raises JoJo. But I mean, this is obviously later on that we'll elaborate more. But I mean, a lot of that, and that's why I would say, there is a separation between gentleman and nobleman. And I would argue that JoJo becomes a gentleman, whereas his father was not.
Yeah, that he was specifically a nobleman.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Are you questioning the gentlemanly nature of Lord Jostar?
I am. Come at me.
Well, we'll get to why you're wrong later when it's plot relevant, but okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, there he does have his moments, but we're not quite there yet.
I'm not saying he doesn't have his moments. I'm just saying that there is a bit of a difference between being a nobleman and a gentleman.
I'm aware, but we have not even gotten to Dio coming to the house yet.
I thought this was a podcast where we talked about our overanalysis.
What was the?
We're not analyzing it at this point, though.
I'm going to do my best not to make comparisons to the anime, but this is just like, it's baked into the identity of JoJo's, where like there are certain panels that are just like so iconic, and then you have like the anime adaptation where they'll like heavily emphasize these moments, and like just Dio leaping out of the carriage as he's first arriving at the Jostar mansion. Like, I think it has to some extent a bit of a similar case with, I mentioned for Hellsing. Like, sometimes the art would go weird, and there's a couple of cases where characters' hair smears into, like, I don't know what.
Yeah, especially it was this one scene with Dio, and for some reason his hair became like an ink smear or something.
That's not the only one that does it. And I will say, like, there's a reason why Hirohiko Araki's art is in the Louvre. There is some early rough patches, but like, just one of the core appeals is it's just such good art. These iconic, like, individual panels that are just, like they're legendary, they're meme-ish.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, young Dio Brando, after making his elaborate entrance from the carriage, brings forward a letter to Lord Jostar claiming his father, Dario Brando, claiming a favor for saving Lord Jostar's life. That now that he has passed away, Dio is to be taken under Lord Jostar's care and raised to be a gentleman in his stead. And Lord Jostar, always a man of his word, goes, of course, why would I not, like, repay the man who saved my life?
Yeah, and it's also implied that this is something that he, easily remembered. So it wasn't like I needed, written proof. I'm like, oh, right, that guy. Yep.
I mean, I would hope he remembers the man who saved his life the day his wife died.
Yeah.
Like,
it's also very much the case where I feel like if the situation had been reversed and Dio Brando,
oh God, I don't want to remember that.
Like, he would have needed written proof. So I feel like that's indicative of Dario's character more than anything else. Like, Dio's entrance, the first thing he does when he arrives at the Jostar mansion to deliver this letter, JoJo comes up to him. Father mentioned that he'd taken someone in. JoJo's dog, Danny, this adorable Dalmatian, comes running over. And JoJo even explicitly says to Dio, oh, don't worry, he's friendly. He would never bite. And just the most brutal kick delivered to this poor dog. If you were wondering if you were ever supposed to like Dio...
The answer is no.
No.
I mean, kick the dog is a meme for a reason. Like,
yeah. Well, it's a meme and a trope. Like, he literally kicks the dog.
Yes.
Hello, villain.
This is when Dio goes on his monologue about how he must destroy this JoJo boy so that he can be named heir to the Jostar fortune.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think this is also where he starts monologuing to himself. He does that a lot.
Yeah, where it's kind of like, if JoJo's maybe like 2 feet away from him, he's like, dude, what are you talking about? I just like to see this, like, if it were like something like live action, where would this monologue take place and the other person wouldn't immediately overhear it?
Yeah.
I mean, in the spotlight.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, these are soliloquies, which honestly, to a large extent, kind of fits with the sort of like period piece aspect to it. It's hilarious and goofy and over the top, but I love it.
I would see a stage play of part 1 JoJo's.
Oh my God, that would be so good.
Someone make this happen and then give us tickets. Please.
Yeah. I mean, we gave the idea, so we at least got tickets, right? So, we very soundly established Dio as the villain of the story. And one of the really cool things is Dio honestly doesn't have to do much to make JoJo look bad. But like, the other thing that is an aspect of Dio would be the main character. He's also like really good at a lot of things. Like, he's a naturally talented individual.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And like JoJo is too, but he squanders so much of it because he's rich and everything's always been handed to him. So Dio being the supervillain that he is and sitting next to JoJo, how much of this is true and how much of this is like Dio manipulating the situation is kind of hard to tell. But like, Lord Jostar is like, I've obviously been too lenient on you. And it's like, to some extent, yeah, JoJo's table manners could use some improvement.
But the fact that immediately, like, he comments on JoJo's like poor table manners, and then immediately, like, he says, "You don't deserve dinner. Go to," and it's like, that should be a teaching moment, not immediately send him go upstairs without food.
Well, I don't think you understand the school Lord Jostar was taught in.
I mean, yes, I do, but it's just like, that's what my criticism is. It should be a learning moment, not no food. It's kind of like, this is what I want you to do. And we also, we're assuming a lot that, JoJo is capable of demonstrating proper table manners. I mean, as a noble, that's something that you would learn at an earlier age. So it's kind of like, why doesn't he just chastise him and say, hey, use your table manners? He says, no, you go to bed with no food. Like, I
think the implication is that Lord Jostar was lenient on his son because they were both mourning the death of his mother. Because we do get a point early on that we see JoJo in his bed, actually in the scene when he's sent to bed without dinner. His bed frame has a portrait of his mother over it, whereas in Lord Jostar's room we see later, we are told that there used to be a portrait of his wife there, but he cannot stand to look at it, so it has been replaced with the stone mask. Lord Jostar has not gotten over his wife's death. JoJo was a baby at the time, so he doesn't have that same connection, but that is what I feel is going on in the background, is why this situation came to me.
But I'm not diminishing that, but I mean, it's kind of like he is still experiencing grief, and obviously that grief has carried into how he's been rearing or not rearing JoJo. But I mean, that's not JoJo's fault. He doesn't deserve to go to bed without dinner because he was not encouraged to use his table manners. I mean, that's not enforcing anything, really.
Well, that's actually also a bit of a clever layer, because one of the things that's great about Dio is, as a villain, he's presented as being this genius tier supervillain. How much of it was Dio manipulating the situation because he is a dirty commoner who's never, seen silverware in his life, yet he had impeccable...
perceptive because of his upbringing in the streets of London. Well, not in the streets, but I mean, you've had to be aware of your surroundings. You've had to be aware of interpersonal relationships. You've had to be more aware of things around you than JoJo has. And that's something he obviously twists to his advantage, where perhaps, like you said, he was not, particularly savant or something, or someone super intellectual. He was just able to kind of pick up on what was expected and perform as such, whereas JoJo perhaps was not able to pick up on those expectations
because he never had to. Lord Jostar wasn't really was being too lenient on his son because of what had happened to both of them, and then Dio comes in and basically
shoves in his face and says, hey, your son should be like this. And then it is up Jostar, and he's just like,
and then he
what the heck, son, you're a slob. Go to your... It's like, but why is he a slob? Why is he a slob, sir?
Whoa. You're asking him to be introspective and maybe take responsibility for his son? No.
I am.
Yeah, he's a Victorian era noble, so I mean,
he could have also had, his staff also step up as well. Victorian noble or not, how much of the rearing was actually done by the parents?
That's a good point as well. It's particularly the dinner scene, but we get a couple of other things of JoJo is falling behind in his education. Here's Dio, who's never seen the inside of a classroom, and he's gotten everything right every time. It's so many different things where JoJo just gets constantly compared to Dio. Dio is presented as perfect at everything. Again, it's very interesting, the dichotomy of it, that as harsh as Lord Jostar is, JoJo starts getting better about things. He really starts growing despite how miserable Dio makes everything for him.
Well, sometimes you have to make it a little bit uncomfortable because he wasn't going to make these changes left to his own devices. Obviously he needed a little negative externality to kind of shift him.
He needed the push.
You needed the push.
You needed the push of some kind of evil supervillain twin coming to live with them.
Sometimes that's what it takes.
I love the little bits we get where whenever Dio and JoJo are alone, Dio will just punch JoJo. I'm no one will ever believe you.
I know. It's the worst. Out of nowhere. Sitting around the fire just reading a book, punch. What?
You know what they say, a little childhood trauma builds character.
It's not enough that Dio is slowly destroying JoJo's home life either.
He has to destroy his social life as well. There's a little like narration blurb about how in the 19th century, sports were taken to a whole nother level. Little boxing like derby thing that people have been doing. JoJo's going to participate. He has no idea this is going to be a plot point. He's just going to go a few rounds with the current champion of this little, for fun amateur league. But then the champ at request bows out because there's a new challenger. And that new challenger is none other than, of course, Dio
Brando, who we get a lovely monologue like as they're about to start. It's like, you don't know, JoJo, you've been boxing here with commoners where I was in the fighting pits of London every single night. And I'm like, whoa, buddy.
Look, it's Dio. He has to be as extra as possible.
Them boxing, and JoJo's just like, oh yes, we'll have a good match. But then Dio's just like, nope, better than you at everything, as he dodges every punch JoJo even attempts to throw at him and starts wailing on him.
The rules are one hit to the face and you lose. Anything else goes. Dio is using a new swaying dodging technique that had been invented. Basically, like he just keeps dodging JoJo to humiliate him, lands some body blows. I think it's just one body blow to stun him, and then just full force right hook right to the face. He even says in his internal monologue, I've won, but I will also jam my thumb into your eye.
Yep.
Beating him in a boxing match isn't enough. He also has to gouge his eye, which in true JoJo's fashion, one of the characters receives a grievous injury that will never be mentioned again.
Isn't it also this scene, though, where we get the point that Dio notices that for some reason, even when you back JoJo into a corner, he only comes back swinging harder?
That's not quite yet. That
like
comes
he's
a little
not,
bit later.
okay. Not yet. It's another confrontation, but yes, that is an observation that Dio does.
Yeah, at this point, JoJo really hasn't quite matured yet. Like he's still the bratty noble kid that he's getting better.
But Dio is just like the epitome of tough love. There is no, let me help, steer you towards a more noble path. Or let me help, Dio
doesn't know what a noble path is. He's extraordinarily.
Nope, I'm just going to destroy you and everything, take everything that you got.
I mean, a great example of that is immediately after winning this fight, Dio calls out to everyone, I will teach you the technique I use to beat JoJo, but on the condition that no one teaches it to him, because he is a tattletale that cannot keep his mouth shut or keep secrets.
Yep.
I'm like, what?
He just says this, and everyone trusts him.
Yep.
If someone said it, it must be true.
Where JoJo is bleeding.
Oh my god, yeah. JoJo's quote-unquote friends, or the people he thought were his friends or his flunkies, even turn against him almost immediately. Yeah.
Great scene of JoJo smoking a pipe in a tree and calls down to his friends going like, hey, you guys want to cut school and smoke a pipe in a tree? And they're like, you dirty tattletale, you're just going to tell on us, and then walks away. We're like, what?
He was already smoking a pipe in a tree. What are you talking about? And honestly, JoJo has that reaction. What are you talking about? That's insane. And we've been getting all of Dio's many asides. Like he's been talking about how if I isolate JoJo completely, he'll become a shell of a man. However, it seems to be working until JoJo once again encounters someone. They're not super clear on how much time has passed since JoJo and Dio have met, but he re-encounters someone that he had that JoJo had previously encountered before. Erina returns the handkerchief he had dropped when they first met. And we get some really cute scenes of those two getting to know each other.
What? What is this, Jacob? How dare JoJo not be sad? It's going directly against my plans that he would have any form of joy in his life. I'm supposed to be making him feel worthless. Me, Dio.
Stop this. Yeah, we get some really cute moments of JoJo and Erina, and Dio finally catches wind of this, and we get one of the most memed lines in all of anime or manga.
This entire scene is so hammy.
You thought your first kiss would be with JoJo, but it was me, Dio. And like, I love that he's like already vampire posing before anything supernatural has happened in the story for this.
He's like, you don't understand. He was born for it, literally.
He really was.
My favorite part about this scene is literally not anything that happens. It's the two schoolboys on the sideline narrating everything that happens. Which is like, Dio just forced a kiss upon her. We would never have the gall to do something so severe, but Dio is a man above us. He is able to do whatever he wants, take whoever he wants. Wait, no, now she is washing her mouth out with mud. Mud? There's a river nearby, but she would prefer the taste of mud to Dio's lips. Like, they narrate all of the images in this comic we're reading
in extreme detail.
It's important.
It's great.
It was very symbolic.
It's very symbolic that Erina would rather wash her mouth out with mud.
Yeah.
Well, that's sort of the fun thing, because like that is actually a really strong character moment for Erina, and that's where, you know, like these two are the parody, because that's something that was very much done back at that point in. Like I know Western comics did that at the time, and I don't know 70s and 80s manga as well, but those two are parodying that. And yet this is actually a really interesting scene for both of the characters, because we also see Dio actually does have a bit of a weakness that he can let his anger get the better of him. He's able to control it in this instance.
This is the first bit we get about how Dio's pride is not anything to ever be infringed upon, because the very fact she would prefer to wash out her mouth with mud, he's like, you do not insult me.
JoJo's is a hilarious parody that lampoons a lot of really dumb stuff in media, but like it's also a really, really good scene establishing characters, because Erina doesn't get a lot. Like, she's not there a lot, but she has a presence as a character.
Oh, absolutely. She has all of her characters very subtle for, you know, being a side character and also being one of the only females involved in the series. But every action she does take is very prominent and very deliberate.
Yeah, a woman in this time period is not expected to do much, yet Erina, whilst
you feel it,
a proper lady of the time, still asserts herself as a character and as a person with really strong moments like that. You know, I mean, JoJo's is great.
JoJo's is great. Join the cult of JoJo's. The end.
Unfortunately, this does have the desired effect of Erina distancing herself from JoJo. Out of shame for what had happened to her, which is just so sad. Like, poor Erina didn't do anything wrong. Like, there's no fault on her part.
And obviously, JoJo picks up on it. He's like, why is Erina being so distant? What's going on? And then one of his childhood buddies actually, you know, tells him that, hey, Dio kissed her.
Passerby mentioned something about Dio. I wonder how severe JoJo thought it was, because JoJo's immediate response is, I'm gonna beat the living hell out of this guy now. This is the point where, like, this is only the second time that JoJo's thrown a punch at Dio. You know, Dio sees him coming and it's like, oh, well, time to put him in his place. He found out about the thing with Erina. Let's deal with this. And at first, Dio is pummeling the hell out of JoJo. But this is the moment where Dio has his realization, because JoJo refuses to go down and starts heading back harder and harder. JoJo has a great moment where he announces, I'm gonna beat you until you cry, and just starts wailing on Dio. He makes good on his promise.
How dare you make me bleed my own blood?
That blood unveiled to both of them a dark secret, because some of Dio's blood splashes on the stone mask that happened to be hanging on the wall, and which was supposed to be in Lord Jostar's office, not in the main hall, now that I'm thinking about it.
It's not plot relevant, It was there because that's where the fight was happening.
Right. When a little blood splashes on it, JoJo thinks he's the only one there who noticed it, but the bone spikes come out and knock the mask off of the wall. He doesn't realize that Dio had also noticed that as well. But honestly, at this point, in many ways, he's not quite fully matured yet, but JoJo very much has changed over the course of these couple of chapters. He doesn't just, pick fights and get beat up anymore. He actually puts a stop to Dio's plans, at least for now, because Dio stops overtly trying to ruin JoJo's life. Dio does have one more utterly unforgivable slight, but he never gets caught for doing this.
And it's also specifically because JoJo hit him back and caused him to bleed. And that's the thing is, Dio did not need to do this. He did this purely out of spite and revenge. And that's why he's not the perfect, cold, calculating villain. He's got these spikes of how dare you insult my pride. I need to get revenge for what you have done to me.
Yeah, he's a true supervillain in every sense. And do we have to talk about the saddest death in the entire series?
Yeah, I know you and Jay don't want to talk about it, so I can.
And the fact that it's a trope in certain horror movies as well.
So, audience at home, if you read along with us, you should have known this was happening. Also, this is pretty known about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. But I'll go ahead and get us past this point. We cut to the butler putting away the burnable trash outside, and he notices a large box down there and just goes, well, that must have been one of the maids threw something away. And he turns on the fire and locks the furnace, and then he hears screaming and banging and goes, oh no, a person must have been in that box. I should have looked. And then busting forth as he opens the door is the burning body of Danny, who is mumbling as if a person would because his mouth has been wired shut. And Danny burns to death with the strong implication that Dio did it as revenge.
It's one of those ones where no one would ever be able to prove that he did it, but
no one else had a vendetta against this dog except him.
The story that gets told is that the police think a burglar did it and found Danny and wanted to kill him so that...
Despite the fact that nothing was stolen.
What they're saying is that the burglar was casing the joint and killed Danny to make it easier to burglarize, which is fine. That makes sense. You don't kill him that way.
Why lock him in a box and put him in a furnace? That doesn't... Yeah, it's...
You shoot the dog, you poison the dog, you lure the dog away. Those make sense for a burglar, not lock him in a box and put him in the trash. Because at that point, you could have burglarized the house.
But no one cares to investigate further.
Well, that's true. And no one's accused Lord Jostar of being a particularly intelligent man either, so...
He is an archaeologist, isn't he?
Yes.
Or is he just got that archaeology?
No, he's not. He himself is not an archaeologist. He just, he bought it.
But anyway, the next chapter, we get my favorite time skip, which is we are just told it is 7 years later.
It is one of the cases where it's I really liked the period piece aspect of Phantom Blood. I would have liked to have seen those 7 years. For the sake of actually getting to the actual plot of the story, it makes a lot of sense to do this.
Well, it's what would we have seen in those 7 years? Because what we're established, it wouldn't have even been more of the same, because what we get established on in the beginning is that Dio and JoJo are friends now. In fact, the best of friends. For 7 years, they have been nothing but good chums.
Have they become true brothers?
And we do get a little bit where JoJo's becomes a rugby manga, and I really enjoyed that.
That was pretty great. And we also now establish the JoJo's trope of everybody being 40 feet wide.
I'm not gonna lie, it was great.
Because
it was pretty great.
JoJo is he's a tree now.
Yes.
And Dio isn't that much off from that.
I am not
I
mad.
love how that's canonical too. They reference the fact they are the size of trees.
Yes. JoJo is I will kick you with my tree trunk of a leg at one point.
Yeah.
Oh, it's great. This is parodying things like Fist of the North Star with like these ridiculously like overly cut character designs, but like, oh my god, it's so amazing. That combined with the ridiculous posing is part of the reason why JoJo's will never leave the public consciousness. However, despite this this astounding rugby win where JoJo drags 4 people along and then passes it to Dio, who, because JoJo had distracted the other team, Dio is open to sprint to score. You know, they have this great sports moment. We get internal monologues from both of them. One of these internal monologues is where we get the really fun Dio hair moment. But we get the internal monologues of, nope, Dio is just as evil as he has ever been, not shocking anyone. But we also see that JoJo can never shake the feeling that Dio hasn't changed, accurately judging his character. And I mean, you know, Dio did burn Danny alive, so it's like, how do you forgive that?
Hey, you could never prove it in a court of law.
Best friend.
After this delightful rugby game, we go home and find out that, oh no, Lord Jostar is ill. He's been sick for weeks, I believe.
How unfortunate, Father. That's right, me, Dio. I have been calling you Father now. You should take your medicine.
You should take your medicine. Don't go to the hospital. They just want money. Take your medicine, Father.
Have I been throwing off enough serial killer vibes, JoJo? Have you noticed anything wrong? No? You're not very smart, are you?
Yeah.
It cuts a weird line of like, I know canonically JoJo's supposed to be pretty intelligent. Like, they're supposed to be epitomes of everything. But because of how hammy everything is, JoJo ends up holding the idiot ball a lot.
See, that's the thing. Like, JoJo isn't stupid, but I don't know that he's supposed to be a genius either. Like, he's a paragon of goodness.
I would argue he's not supposed to be a genius for the mere fact that he's constantly running into people who are teaching him things.
He is college educated.
He is college educated. Yeah, he's not stupid. It's just he's not a genius. And like Dio.
I'm just saying the plot does not portray him as smart, is what I'm trying to get across here.
Which is not unfair. Yeah, I've never gotten the impression that JoJo was a particularly smart boy.
Yeah, I would say he's not like a genius. He's definitely intelligent because he also has a curiosity. I mean, he studied, archaeology, and so he has a curiosity and he enjoys research. He enjoys learning about things.
Yeah, and something that you mentioned, Jay, that's really important. Like, one of the things that like is a showing of JoJo's growth, that like he is willing to listen to people. Like, if someone knows something, he's very willing to, okay, well then teach me. This is the point where we see that he really has grown, matured, and he has at this point truly become a gentleman. He's not completely flawless, but
he owns that.
And it's like one of the big things is that he's willing to improve and be better, which is something that I think is fair to say wouldn't have been true in the beginning when we first meet him.
This scene also has one of my favorite lines from JoJo, where he's on his father's sickbed and he slams down in pure rage, "Father, no, your sickness. If only I'd given up archaeology and had gone into medicine, then I could heal you."
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, buddy.
Again, as good as this is, it's still a parody, and oh boy, does it have those moments. It's something that has to be experienced, dear listeners. Watch and read JoJo's, because they're both great, but it's so hammy.
Ham is delicious.
Anyway, let's get the Deus Ex Machina out of the way.
JoJo is, I didn't even know what he's doing when he finds this letter. He just knocks over some boxes and finds Dio Brando's letter.
He's frustrated because he feels that he picks up on the fact that it's somehow connected to Dio, but he's not sure how.
I don't think it's even that. I think he's like looking through his father's books for some reason.
Yeah, because he doesn't suspect Dio at this point. He can't be convinced that Dio wasn't the one who killed Danny, but he doesn't think that Dio has anything to do with his father's sickness, because the idea of, poisoning a person never enters noble JoJo's mind.
He's so sweet, so innocent.
In all fairness, it has also been 7 years of Dio playing the best friend game. So JoJo has never trusted him in those 7 years. There's always been something like holding him off from fully trusting. But like, it's also, he acknowledges, maybe I shouldn't rush to judge because I'm not even sure. The cops said it was a burglar. Like, I just suspect it was Dio who killed Danny.
JoJo even thinks that.
But anyway, he finds the letter from Dio Brando.
Was it hidden in one of his father's journals? Was that it?
I don't know why it would be hidden. Like, that's the thing.
No, it wasn't hidden. It was just stuffed in a box somewhere that he happened to knock over. And I really like this because this is another one where it's like JoJo might not be the brightest knife in the crayon box, but he's not stupid either because he immediately makes the connection. Dario, in his letter to Lord Jostar, mentions the symptoms that he is suffering from, and JoJo immediately realizes this is exactly the sickness that Father has been suffering from. At which point he waits to see who has been giving Father the medicine that he's supposed to be taking. He hides around a corner when he sees Dio taking away the medicine that the doctors had been giving and replacing it with something else. That's a moment that, like, it really is a great moment for JoJo where, think about the character development. You know, earlier JoJo would have flown off the handle and immediately
gone over to, like, tackle and punch him and everything. But now he's kind of like, I'm going to approach this, you know, from a different angle later. And
JoJo grills Dio on, I saw you swapping the envelopes. You know, what did you just do? You know, Dio's trying to play it off. And again, just a really great character moment for JoJo where he says, swear on your father's honor, you have no ill intent. Dio responds exactly the way JoJo feared he would.
Honor.
I love how JoJo's like inner monologue of like what he thinks is that Dio's pride is too much that he would never like allow himself to lie about that situation. Like he that's what he expects of Dio. Dio flies off the handle.
He's used to being around nobles, so if you're going to be a noble, you're going to always be noble about it. Well, Dio's like, I'm not having any of that crap with that.
Yeah, the plan works for the opposite reason, though. Dio would lie about that, but he breaks the... How dare you imply that scumbag of a man that, like...
ever had honor.
Like, yeah, he refuses to acknowledge his father in the same breath as the word honor. Like,
that's so in character for JoJo because, like, he thinks the best of everyone. He does his best to see the good in everyone. And unfortunately, the person he's standing across from is about as abject evil as it gets. This time, JoJo is weak no more. He is, when Dio flies off the handle, JoJo moves to take the poison from Dio. Dio tries to stop him, pull his arm away, and they have another fight. It doesn't last nearly as long as last time, and it is significantly more one-sided. The other sort of nice thing is that, like, for all of what's been going on, JoJo wants proof. So he goes out, again, not totally stupid. He makes a point of saying, do not let anyone, he goes to his father and says, do not let anyone give you anything other than the doctors until I return. I can't tell you why for the sake of your heart, but please.
Mm-hmm.
That's another thing is JoJo hires 2 more doctors. So there's now a team of doctors.
But also the fact that JoJo also wants to approach this as methodically and as well informed as he can. So he does take the medicine, the poison, to his university and tries to have it, reverse engineered so they could find out, analyze where it could be, where it could have originated, and they're not able to decode it.
This is, of course, a Victorian 19th century story, so it is a mysterious concoction from the East that cannot be understood by science.
Yep.
Because it's still JoJo's. JoJo is able to start to figure out where Dio would have gotten this from. He surmises that Dio...
being from London.
Yep, I'll head there, and he finds out that stuff like this can be found on the incredibly dangerous Ogre Street. We, meanwhile, get a parallel story of Dio deciding, well, I've been found out. I'm not going to jail for this. I'm going to have to kill JoJo now. Method is actually kind of clever because he also noticed what the stone mask did. He intends to use the stone mask on JoJo to kill him. and then no one would know that the stone mask could do that. And even if they look into his research and find it, they would just assume that JoJo's own research had been the end of him. You know, further establishing Dio as the supervillain that he is.
We find ourselves on Ogre Street, which the tales of it being a crime-ridden den were definitely not exaggerated, because within like seconds of JoJo arriving on the scene, a literal like mob of thugs descends upon him.
He gets off the wagon and is immediately surrounded. Like, at first, it's just 3 people.
Well, to be fair, he shouldn't have gone out of the house like that.
Yeah, he is dressed like a noble, and like they all call him out like, it's really stupid of you to dress like that and walk here. You should have known this was coming. To which JoJo responds, I don't care. I'm here on a mission, and this is what I happened to be wearing at the time. Do you know where this came from? And shows the poison.
Bold of him to assume they can recognize poison on sight.
Yeah.
Because it's in a packet. Like,
yeah. But still, I mean...
What's inside this manila envelope? Tell me.
This colorless, tasteless powder with no smell, and we're also like 20 feet away from each other in the middle of the streets of London.
I need answers.
Sewage
look, man,
was a thing.
Do you want Coke? Is that are you trying to buy drugs? Because you're at the right place.
You're at the right place for that. So yeah, they proceed to try to mug him, and JoJo's battle tactics are interesting. One of them tries to stab him, so he grabs the blade of the knife.
Yeah, and they're like, you idiot, why'd you grab it? If you know if I just twist it, you're going to lose all 4 of your fingers. He's like, well, even if I end up losing all 4 of my fingers, it's worth it.
It's worth it.
It's specifically what he says is, the second you pull that blade and cut off my fingers, this tree trunk of a leg will find its way into your groin. Is that a bet you're willing to take?
It's great. There's a short fight scene, character gimmicks that don't actually come up again. I don't think the important character of this group, Speedwagon, ever uses his hat thing again.
That was pretty amazing, though. It was
pretty great. You could afford to use it more.
Yeah.
His hat has like 3 blades in it that turns it into like. Does Odd Job from James Bond have the same hat?
Yeah, it's an Odd Job hat. Yes.
Okay.
Which I think this is. Actually, no, I don't know, because the James Bond books are super old.
Maybe.
Almost certainly this is a reference to Odd Job, because that's like a 60s movie.
Okay,
like,
yeah, then...
There's no
then
way JoJo's is 60s.
No, yeah, it's not. I kept saying in previous episodes that JoJo and Dragon Ball were 70s. They're actually really early 80s, like 82 and 83, or something along the... or 83 and 84. It was early 80s, so... I was a little bit off other times I mentioned it, but... Yeah,
Goldfinger is 1964, so...
Okay, yeah, then that's definitely an Odd Job reference, 100%.
Point is, he should have kept the hat trick, and that definitely would have been something that he could be more consistent about.
It would have been really useful at other points, but...
Well, hold on, let's... Little spoilers here. After this fight, it would literally never be useful again.
Yeah, you're not wrong either. I guess that's true.
The great way that this fight concludes is JoJo crosses his arms and gets hit in the bone by Speedwagon's hat. And Speedwagon even goes, I heard that sound. That's the sound of the blades connecting with bone.
He basically just restates his resolve at that point that, like, I know he gives Speedwagon a good punch to the face, but... he basically just restates his resolve. I don't care what you do to me. I'm here with purpose, and I don't care if I lose an arm or a leg.
And apparently that just ticked all the boxes in Speedwagon Tinder bio, because he then immediately falls in love with JoJo. I cannot describe their relationship in any other way. This is someone who is smitten with an individual.
You're not wrong. The other thing that Speedwagon notices is that JoJo absolutely laid out all of the thugs. He gave Speedwagon himself a good shot, and the other 2 were like on the ground groaning in pain. But he also notes, this guy, they restate, this guy is a tree. He could have broken our faces, but he chose not to. he is a true gentleman. And this is like the first time when it gets stated when this is actually also the part where the army of thugs comes out and they're about to descend on JoJo for attacking the Ogre Street respected Speedwagon. And Speedwagon says, if anyone lays a hand on this gentleman, they shall answer to me, Speedwagon, because everyone has to dramatically announce things like that in this manga.
I mean, yeah.
And at that point, JoJo has made a friend for life. And I never thought about it, Matt, but yeah, you're probably right. Maybe more than a friend.
Oh, no. Yeah. Like in all of, especially in the internal monologues, like Speedwagon is in love with JoJo. Like there is no other way to read that. Like every thought this man has is about how cool JoJo is.
Yeah, you're right. I never thought about it that way, but you are absolutely right about that. That makes it even better, honestly.
There's a scene later on that I'll point it out to. It becomes really obvious.
But yeah, Dio is, meanwhile, as he's going around to like set up his plan to kill JoJo with the stone mask, he hears that JoJo's going to Ogre Street, and his immediate response is, oh, he's going to get himself killed. I don't even need to worry about this. But he tests out the stone mask anyway.
Specifically, he gets wine drunk walking around the city streets and then bemoans himself for picking up his father's vice.
And he bumps into two other people basically in the same state as he is, just significantly older and grungier. And he decides he's going to test out the stone mask on one of them. And the bones do pop out of the mask and impale the guy through the skull. So test successful. There were some unforeseen consequences of this action, though. Because the guy's not dead. He gets up with the bones still impaling his brain. Dio tries to use the knife he has on him, cuts two of the guy's fingers off. Not quite sure how that works, but
it's worse than that. He like cuts from the joint between his two fingers and the rest of his hand, cuts through his hand and then most of his arm. And what that does is deflects the punch that was coming at him from hitting him and instead directs it to the wall next to him, which this panel is where I went from really appreciating the art to going, oh my God, I understand why this is so dynamic now, because we get an amazing panel of this guy, this like random guy who just got infected by the mask, punches a like dome crater into the side of a building that is 2 stories tall.
It's a really cool image.
Also, Dio's going to die.
He's in a bit of a state right now, because the other thing is, while he was using the blade of this knife to deflect the guy's punch, it shattered his collarbone because the guy was so strong. And it's one of those ones where it's like he punched a crater into a wall, so obviously he's superhumanly strong, but just being in the presence of someone who has awakened the power of the stone mask, just being like within arm's reach of them is probably going to shatter at least a few of your bones, is what we get established. However, this guy, he's basically just turned into a feral animal at this point. We do see they're not directly called vampires up to this point.
I think Dio gets called a vampire at one point, but like I think Dio calls himself a vampire, actually.
I think I think someone says that one of the antagonists later is a zombie vampire, as in a zombie made by a vampire. Therefore, Dio must be a vampire. But specifically, this is a roundabout way of saying the stone mask turns you into a JoJo's vampire, a JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Universe vampire, which is not a normal vampire, because we also, the reason I bring this up is we see how vampires drink blood in this universe. It's interesting.
You shove your fingers into someone's throat.
Then like drain their life force or something. It's really weird. Yeah, and this is happening to Dio when, fortunately for him, unfortunately for literally everything else in the entire JoJo's universe, the sun starts to come up and immediately vaporizes new feral vampire.
I can only assume that must be a curse of the stone mask, is you discover your powers just minutes before dawn. Because that happens to another person in a flashback.
It means do your experimentation much earlier in the evening, guys.
Well, that's the thing. That's how it is for Dio. He doesn't do it right before dawn. He makes a point of it being early in the night. But yes, Dio has now formulated a new plan of how to get out of the situation that he's currently in. We see him returning to the Jostar mansion after this experience, and he sees JoJo waiting for him, and he starts laying it on real thick of, oh, I realize how horrible I've been. To have grown up a street urchin like me, it must be in my blood. I'll turn myself in. Just if you would be so kind as to give me time.
Dio says, "A lonely street urchin by me. I am just a product of my environment."
Yes.
Because
that's
that counteracts
character for him. Yeah.
Because that counteracts immediately what Speedwagon interjects with product of his environment. No, I am from the streets as well, and I can know. That person is pure evil. That's an ability we gain by being on the street.
Stop giving us a bad name.
He does kind of give that vibe, doesn't he? And like that is the thing, though, because it's like you can, like, if you're looking at Dio,
bad people who are products of their environment, and then there's Dio.
Dio is genuinely, purely, innately evil. One of like, and so in that he has been, Speedwagon pops out and says, "Don't listen to him, Mr. Jostar. I have seen his type before." And they also reveal that the man who had been selling Dio the poison had already
ratted him out too, and like
already confessed. And then the police opened the door that they had been hiding behind, because, and like, it very much is the case where I really like this as a moment for JoJo, because like, JoJo didn't want to think, even though he knew. Like, you can't not know at that point. But like, JoJo wanted to think that like maybe this is all a colossal misunderstanding and I just personally don't like it. But no, it's like he doesn't do this stupid thing of actually trusting Dio. He has it set up for when Dio inevitably reveals that, yes, I am as awful as you think I am, that it's already set up to take him in. But Dio has one last trick up his sleeve. He says he wants JoJo to be the one to cuff him. JoJo acquiesces because it's like, I don't want to defend him too much because he is still naive. There's no other way of putting it.
But then the medicine man, as Dio's father, Jostar Senior, goes back up the stairs, turns away to let JoJo take care of it. The medicine man actually does, say that man's not going to go quietly.
He's not going to die, because like that. We also got a bit of a flashback with these two, and the three moles on Dio's ear that I always think are earrings, because
I always thought they were
of this series. But he says, I knew someone who had a birthmark like that. He lived for 183 years. Some medicine man from the East mentions that that man will not go so quietly. And Dio distracts JoJo with the fact that he has the stone mask from that JoJo had been studying, and it stuns JoJo long enough for him to pull out the knife. And Dio intends to stab JoJo and use his blood to activate the stone mask on himself. However, Lord Jostar leaps in the way, protecting his son, and it is his blood that instead activates the mask as the police, thanks guys, then shoot Dio and blast him out the window as the stone mask pierces his skull.
Yeah, they shoot Dio a lot. He gets shot by 8 guys with enough force to throw him out a window.
Throw him out of a window, yeah, he goes flying. We're getting this dramatic scene of Lord Jostar is expiring. He has a line that I kind of like, lying in the arms of your beloved son is not the worst way to go, or something to that effect, which I really liked, because it really does go to show how far, JoJo had come. However, the medicine man wasn't wrong about Dio. He is not going to die this day. We don't see him rise. Like, Speedwagon is like, get a doctor. And then he turns around and sees that just outside the window, there is nothing. So that's a problem. I believe it's around this point that we also get another flashback of the police constable lamenting the fact that
It's specifically as Mr. Jostar is dead. He recalls the wedding ring that in his dying breath he gives to JoJo. It's his mother's ring. And he had two, but that was when we get revealed that Mr. Jostar all along.
the wedding band and the engagement ring.
And Mr. Jostar reveals all along he knew Dio's father was a dirtbag. But like it wasn't so much that he was deceived by this person. It's that he wanted to be a good person, and like his moral values is that you repay debts that are given to you, because it is established that, at least from Jostar's point of view, is his life was saved by Dario. Like,
well, and that's the thing. Dario does in fact save both JoJo and Lord Jostar. He robs them first, but for Lord Jostar that doesn't matter. You still saved my life, and I still owe you my son's life. So raising your son is absolutely something, I'm willing to do for you.
And like the big thing, the police constable, like his point of view is like, I can't believe he wouldn't want to see like the man who hurt him punished. But like we then get from Speedwagon, which is great, he narrates the like bond between father and son that is passing, that he's like, no, you don't understand. That is such a pure conviction. Like, it doesn't matter if they've hurt you. Like, the very nature of like upholding your values and being a good person is, it doesn't matter if someone's a bad person. You still treat them with the utmost kindness, and you repay debts to them, like, and you give people the benefit of the doubt up until like it hurts you. Up
until you have irrefutable proof that they are not worthy of such consideration. Yeah.
That's the thing, though. He has irrefutable proof that he is not worthy. He ignores that because I'm still going to repay my debt because you did help me. Mm-hmm. I feel indebted to you, and a good person would repay that debt without thinking anything beyond it. And also gives him the ring, like something that means a lot to him. He's like, clearly you need it, sell it, go become a good person, because he's giving him the chance. He's like, I know he doesn't want to believe someone will always be a bad person. He's like, please take this, go make something of your life. Like,
and even the police chief immediately says, he's just like, I warned him then. He's like, he's just going to spend it on like booze or whatever.
What Lord Jostar wants to believe, and this is something that he ultimately, funnily enough, through JoJo growing and maturing in the wake of all of Dio's nonsense, the thing that he imparts onto his son that JoJo keeps is that believing that people aren't inherently evil, and that it was circumstances that caused Dario to be the way he was, that if he just has this chance, he can make something of himself.
He obviously failed that chance.
Well, one of the really cool things is, and I think this happens much earlier on, but Dio actually asserts himself that people in general are good. I am not good. People, generally speaking, are inherently good. I am pure evil. And from Dio's perspective, that he feels that makes him superior because he's willing to do whatever it takes to succeed. And like, especially with like a lot of the people who we meet over the course of, honestly, most of the series, you see a lot of people who are evil because they choose to be evil. But like, the series never really refutes the idea that, people are good, and that, trusting in people gives you a lot of chances to get burned, but it's worth it, because I mean, like, who would give Speedwagon a chance?
Mm-hmm. And like, when we got to this point, I was actually of two minds of how I felt about this moral, because it's like, in the way it's presented, it very much feels like on an initial watch, like, oh, are you seriously, is your moral don't have faith in people because some people are just bad? And like, that's the knee-jerk reaction. But then, like, as we read more, I was like, wait, no, it's more nuanced than that. It's like, you've got to have faith in people. And like, faith by its very nature is something that like you don't need to have like evidence of, and in fact can fly in the face of evidence, because like you want to believe that people are inherently good because that is the world that is better for you. And like Jonathan Jostar died for that belief that people are inherently good. Like he wanted to believe Dio could be good if he was raised right, and he wanted to believe Dario, if he was given a second chance, would be a better person. And that was something he believed so heartedly. He died for it, and he wasn't upset that he died. He died happy in his son's arms because he died for a belief that he thought was better.
And honestly, a belief that made JoJo a better person.
Mm-hmm.
Like, JoJo is who he is because that belief got ingrained in him. I have a decent knowledge of all the way up to part 4, and like Jonathan Jostar is such a, you know, and I mentioned like Araki mentioning that JoJo is supposed to be like a paragon of goodness. He is a very genuinely good person, and him being that way makes the world a better place. Again, like, you know, my immediate thought is, for all the Dios in the world, you also have the Speedwagons. Like, who would ever give Speedwagon a second chance? Everything about him says that he should be exactly the same way Dio is, but he's not. He's good at heart, and it's worth putting yourself at risk for people like that.
And like in a lesser story, what the moral would be is the second one person is just plain evil and cannot be healed. They would be the antithesis to your moral of like, that's why you shouldn't give everyone a chance. Some people are just always going to be bad. But like what the moral of JoJo's essentially, I'm just going off of what we've read, seems to be like, yes, Dio is inherently evil and he is beyond redemption. But like, that's not an antithesis to people are good and deserve a second chance. Like Dio still deserved a second chance. He just threw it away. But like Dio being bad does not negate the moral that everyone can be fixed. Like Dio can't, but like one person being an exception. Yeah, one person being an exception does not negate good things.
Yeah, the thing that really sold that to me was the fact that like Dio himself acknowledged that most people are good. And so why would you let the Dios of the world ruin everyone for you? You know, it's a really, really solid moment, and it does so much. It makes Dio all the more loathsome as the villain, and JoJo all the more endearing as the protagonist. That like there's this dichotomy of the two. They are perfect foils of each other.
And speaking of perfect foils, they have a really cool mansion battle, which Can we get off on the first bit here where Dio, it was revealed how he was hiding was he had jumped up above the window and was holding himself with his fingers embedded into the wall. Like his strength was forcing him up, and I'm like, okay, I guess we just need to concede in the JoJo's universe. Walls are made out of like
tissue paper,
immortal concrete that cannot be moved by people's weights. Like because he's holding
because he's over the windowsill. You're right.
Yeah, like the level of material he's embedded in, what should happen is he should just fall through that, not
hang there. Look, he's using his vampire powers, okay? That's what's going on now.
As long as we're starting about the fight, they immediately start fighting and Speedwagon's there, and then there's a scene about a little bit into the fight where Dio, because I think the stairs are burning, instead walks up the wall and then through the ceiling by embedding his feet. And I'm like, how does that work?
Yeah, he's stomping into the wall and Well, that's one of the really cool moments.
The ceiling has to be like 2 feet thick though, because he's going like up to the like mid calf.
But yeah, one of the really cool things, and this is something that gets emphasized in the anime adaptation really well. There I go again. But like what's going on right there, like he's walking up the side of a wall and he's talking about how he has surpassed the limits of humanity. Like he is like beyond any normal thing. Like this shouldn't be possible, but he's doing it anyway in defiance of reality. This
how bizarre it is, JoJo.
I think is that another case where he says bizarre, but like
someone says bizarre.
Like that's one of like those iconic images that always gets recycled of just Dio walks up the side of a wall just because he can. The beginning of the fight is they try shooting him in the head. That doesn't work. They try JoJo tries an iron spear that gets twisted like a pretzel. So the next best thing they can think of is fire, which kind of, by this point, the cops have all been slaughtered by the by. And the only two survive. I think some of the cops, I actually don't know if some of the cops get out. The only two survivors that we like get any focus for are JoJo and Speedwagon, mostly because Speedwagon is there to dramatically narrate everything that's happening. It's great.
I think the majority of the bystanders have actually left at this point because Lord Jostar has been declared dead. Like, one guy is near the window and like is looking around. He gets immediately killed by Dio, but at that point, I think everyone else had left because there is a small amount of time that has passed because Lord Jostar has been moved up to his study.
Yeah, there was a fairly large group of cops, and there's like 2 or 3 people left by this point. Because I know Dio drains the life force of at least one of them. Because Dio reveals that when vampires do that to someone, they can turn that person into a zombie. But the zombie that Dio makes there is quickly dispatched, I believe, by the Iron Spear. Basically, what JoJo realizes is the stone mask. And like this is very much like this is 19th century logic that the story is using to its advantage. JoJo's like, there's so much that's unknown about the brain. The bones that come out of the stone mask must interact with very specific locations in the brain that unlock latent abilities that turn you into a vampire, I guess. And so he realizes that the only way that he can stop the constantly regenerating Dio is if he destroys the brain completely so that it cannot use those unlocked abilities, and burning him into nothing is the only option that's available to him. I think JoJo goes up the stairs as they're being consumed by the flame, and Speedwagon's telling him not to do it. And then Dio's like, oh, you think I'm going to walk through the fire like you want me to? I will do this instead. And then proceeds to start walking up the wall. Because Dio.
We get Speedwagon monologuing about like, no, my love, don't sacrifice yourself for me.
Even Speedwagon is afraid.
I merely stole property. He stole lives.
That's a little later, but yeah.
Still a great Speedwagon line.
It is a great Speedwagon line. Speedwagon is great. I love Speedwagon. Yeah, JoJo keeps drawing Dio higher and higher up to the roof of the mansion, because if the entire building is burned and then JoJo shoves Dio back down, which, what a metaphor. Like, Dio keeps climbing higher and higher, and then JoJo drags him down into the fires of hell. It's one of those examples where, for all of the crazy campy hamminess of Speedwagon narrating a bunch of stuff he doesn't have to, like, that metaphor is not done farcically. That's a really clever image. JoJo is able to tackle Dio down through the ceiling. Dio does the trick where he just embeds himself into the wall again. Goodbye, JoJo. JoJo's able to does parkour with the spear that had been broken, I think, which also doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's really cool.
Thank you. You've described this fight. A lot of it doesn't make any sense, but it's really cool because currently he's still suplexing Dio back into fire, and Dio's got a great line of like, "JoJo, you fool! The fire won't kill me." And JoJo's like, "Good thing it's not just the fire then." What? No, because in secret he was not piling him directly into the fire, because even JoJo realized that would not be enough to kill Dio. It was on to the guardian goddess of the Jostar family, the goddess of love, who had a spear on top of the statue, and that impales Dio, keeping him in place as the fire burns.
Dio was able to separate himself from JoJo. JoJo uses his belt to pull him down, and by pure happenstance, what luck JoJo has, the impact of Dio hitting the spear knocks JoJo out of a window, so he survives too.
Yep.
How about that?
Yeah, because it could have been something, and he had another lucky break. Like, there were two lucky things.
He found the spear that had been broken previously, and he parkours off of that so that he can use his belt to pull Dio down. Because one of the other oft memed moments is the "Goodbye, JoJo," because the Japanese version of the anime is really famous. I like that line a lot. It's really funny. For all the seriousness, it's a really funny moment.
Hey, Sam in the future, who has to edit this, go find the clip.
Goodbye, JoJo!
Yeah. Yeah, you can put the clip over me saying it.
That should make up for us doing this without you.
Yeah, make more work for him. That'll make up for not doing JoJo's.
No.
Aye.
Anyway, JoJo's recovering in the hospital.
And we get my favorite Speedwagon scene.
Once you said it, I realized, oh yeah, this is what you're talking about.
Where he runs into the nurse, and Speedwagon just goes, "How dare this nurse stop me, Speedwagon, from seeing my beloved friend JoJo?" Wait, hold on. I can see her hands are bloodied. Wait, has she been re-bandaging him over and over again? How many times has she bandaged him? Her injuries are that of someone who has bandaged him at least 162 times. And I'm like, Speedwagon, hold on, buddy. Slow down here.
Hey, don't get in the way. This bromance needs to blossom.
This woman is in the way of our mighty bromance. But she must truly care for this JoJo. For if he was had his broken bones in a cast, he would not be able to have his burns healed. So she has not casted his arm. But that means she needs to stay by his side constantly so he does not wake up and unset his bones. What kind of nurse would do this? She must have feelings for him. But I am the only one who can have feelings for him.
No, I think Speedwagon takes it well, because he does leave Erina too.
You know what? So long as I'm interjecting, I'm going to pop in here to say Speedwagon himself says he withdraws coolly, which he is. He's very cool.
But yeah, the girl from the beginning is a nurse now.
Yeah, it's sort of funny because, like, to some extent, it kind of seems like they're trying to leave it being Erina as a reveal, but also it's the same person. Like, they show her face in full. It's not like they hide it.
Try and keep it a surprise, but then you remember there's only one woman in this entire comic.
Really? Like, they don't even ever show JoJo's mom. Like,
everyone's mother is dead. There are no young women because they're all old women, kind of. But
yeah, in the background, but no like characters.
There are no other love interests. Like, he only interacts with one female in his entire life. He goes, I'm assuming he goes to an all-boys school too, because,
probably. And no, yeah. He's definitely homeschooled.
It's Victorian era. All schools were all-boys schools.
Oh, that's also true. Though, yeah, I gotta say though, Erina, pretty top tier. Like,
of all the women in this comic, she is my favorite.
Which there are one. She is my favorite.
By that metric, also my least favorite, but we won't go into that.
Yeah, all seems well enough. Friendly reminder: Jack the Ripper exists.
Yes.
That's really it, too, as we just get confirmed. Oh, there is another woman in the scene. She immediately gets killed by Jack the Ripper. She immediately does.
No, wait, yeah, no, there's 3 women in this story. There is the woman who gets killed by Jack the Ripper, there's Erina, and then there's the sacrifice at the very beginning. The first character we see is a young woman. So, yeah, Erina is first place of 3.
There's also the 2 old women in the next arc who talk about the missing women. And then there's also the women who are used as chattel for the vampires. So whether or not you want to count them as characters, they don't get named.
I mean, the sacrifice doesn't get named either. So
they also, the women who are being eaten by the vampires are already dead at that point, though. So
notice there are no lady vampires either.
Huh,
Do they
that's a
even
good
become? Do they even become vampire zombies? We don't even get to see that. Like, there are just no women.
you know,
The women just die.
Dio does seem to have like a huge thing against women currently. Like that's part of his character is he resents women.
Yeah.
Because his only example was his mother, and his mother was useless.
Oh, I thought his example was Erina, who after he kissed her, washed her mouth out with mud.
I mean,
I think it was before
both.
that. Like, definitely, I think he always hated people, but then women.
Yeah, he hates everyone but women in particular because he's a very likable character that you're supposed to endear yourself to.
Yes. You don't understand. They wound his ego. They are a threat.
Just by existing. That sounds like something Dio would think.
Dio's looking like Emperor Palpatine right now.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, the fire didn't quite finish him off, and we finally understand the significance of all the Jack the Ripper stuff. Dio recruits him.
Yeah, he's like, hey, I'm making a team of extraordinary individuals, except evil. So do you want to have unlimited power?
Do you want to be a zombie?
Yeah, they definitely lead you up to believe he's going to offer them the mask to be vampires underneath him, but no, it's I'm going to turn you into a zombie, which we get established later is not a good deal.
No, it's not. But yeah, and like that is the thing though, where it's like when it comes to Dio, do you think he would ever let anyone else be a vampire if he had the choice? He sees himself as above all things. Like he would never let someone be his equal. Though the good news is JoJo is recovered enough to walk around now. He returns to his ruined home, and unfortunately, he can't find the stone mask, and that keeps eating away at him. But well, what are you gonna do? At which point he turns around and meets the enigmatic Will A. Zappelli.
Will A. Zappelli is quite the individual because he's got that like checkerboard hat that Araki draws every single time, and that always amazes me. Like that is a detailed hat to have as your character's constant like.
I wanted that hat.
I mean, that's something that you could always say about JoJo. The effort put into the character designs. There's a reason why these characters are never forgotten, because they all have such intricate details everywhere on them that is not necessary, but like wow.
Can we go to my favorite part of Zappelli's introduction, where he immediately punches JoJo in the gut, who is currently like wrapped up from like hospital bandages and everything, with his nurse taking him on like a walk for fresh air around the compound. Zappelli just punches him in the gut. He coughs and his arm instantly heals its way out of its cast. And he's like, what?
The other thing is, it's a punch with the pinky extended where most of his forearm disappears into JoJo's chest.
Yep.
Like, I struck your diaphragm so you would breathe differently, and that instantaneously healed you.
You must now breathe in the bizarre way I do.
This is where we get introduced to the main character's superpower set of Hamon. It's really fun, all the different names that this has.
By Zappelli, it's called Hamon Ripple, and occasionally he calls it like the blood energy.
And there's like a Sando, I believe, is another name that he gives it.
Sando is technically like the philosophy of it, like the East Asian philosophy from which Hamon is the energy. But
And Hamon translates into the ripple. So it's one of those ones where it's like it has 30 different names because you're calling it 3 different things. Like it has to be extra because it's JoJo's. But yeah, we Zappelli explains a little bit of the origin of the stone mask, that he actually was on the expedition that found it. So he knows better than anyone how dangerous that it is.
In that a similar incident happened where someone wore the stone mask and ate basically the entire crew in their vampire form and chased him into the water. and was about to consume him. And then in the morning light of dawn, he recognized the face as that of his father. No longer a man, but a monster.
Yep. It struck a particularly deep chord.
That brings up something to Dio's character. Is it everyone else who puts this mask on becomes like a feral beast?
I was just gonna say
Dio was already a monster.
He was already, and he was already a monster. Like you can't make Dio any more savage than he already is.
Or if you say that, if you were to say that to him, Jacob, I'm pretty sure he would prove you wrong, or he would prove you. Yeah.
I am a gentleman.
No, he's just like, wait, you're saying I couldn't? You're saying I couldn't do that?
Don't limit me. Don't limit me that I can't be worse than I already am, you cretin.
I'll kick 2 dogs.
I don't want that. No. But yeah, so Zeppeli is going to teach JoJo the power of Hamon so that he can stand against the power of Dio and the stone mask.
Which actually, he then realizes JoJo doesn't need to be taught the power of it. He needs to be taught to control it, because JoJo touches a branch with his healed arm and it instantly sprouts into flowers from the overflowing Hamon that must be within his body. He has taken to this new breathing technique so forcefully, like out of nothing.
Yeah, he's got that protagonist energy going on.
Because it's specifically stated here that the dark mask absorbs the power of other people's blood and uses it to fuel your body, and it is a force of destruction. Whereas Hamon is a power that is granted originally from the sun, but comes from within, from your own blood. It is a force of good in nature, because one of the first examples we get is Zeppeli going to punch a frog. And everyone's like, no, don't punch that frog, which, JoJo, I'm going to point out, you did have a scene early on where you said you liked tying frogs up by their leg and twirling them around on a string. So
yeah,
you are not the frog savior here, so shush.
But anyway,
I mean, that was younger, immature JoJo, to be fair, but yeah, it's a bad
He's enlightened now.
It was, but Zeppeli punches the frog straight, and it even squishes down around with like a little ribbit. And instead, the ripple of his fist goes through the frog, leaving it unharmed as it shatters the rock beneath it. For that is the power of Hamon.
Pretty sure the frog feels violated slightly. He's like, what the hell is wrong with these people?
Then JoJo meditates for a week, which I don't blame you if you didn't notice, because the 1 week later panel was very well disguised.
Yeah. As JoJo is refining his abilities, Dio sends the poison dealer with ridiculous sword claw hands. Because why not?
Well, it's because he's a Chinese stereotype.
Well, I mean,
it's really what it's coming down to.
You're not wrong.
You have to remember, their craft originally was produced by the Japanese, and
yeah.
Well, not even the Japanese. Like, that's an 80s action movie stereotype. It's like the wise Chinese merchant. Like, that's just
yeah.
That is a stereotype of the time.
It looks really dumb, and I love it. But yeah, JoJo is able to use what he has learned to defeat this zombie poison merchant guy with claw hands, and he goes running off to inform Dio that JoJo has become strong. Our last little story movement is Zeppeli and JoJo. JoJo chooses to leave Erina as far away from all of this as possible, which honestly, fair. When does Speedwagon show up? Because
he gets in the carriage with them on the way there. Like, I think he heard they were going on a road trip, and he's like, my boy ain't going away without
from my beloved JoJo, my beloved Mr. Jostar.
He sensed the disturbance that his JoJo needed him, and then he was there.
I can only assume.
My JoJo sense is tingling.
We get established that there is just on the border of the Jostar estate where the knights of the British Kingdom were trained. There is a town at the end of a long tunnel. Wells Night or Wis Night? I forget what the town's name is.
I thought it was Wins Night. Like
it might be Wednesday night.
I think it's Wednesday.
Wins Night.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's Wednesday.
But anyway, the big thing about this, it was where knights were trained, and for some reason in this long tunnel, there is a broadsword embedded into the roof that no one knows why.
I don't know why either, and I've read this.
It doesn't explain it.
No, it really doesn't.
Well, yeah, we'll get to it, but essentially what has been revealed is that Dio has made his home here. And he's like, I started too big before. I'm going to slowly build a base of power. I'm never going to fight anyone directly if I can avoid it. I'm going to build a circle around me to keep me protected. And from there, I will conquer this town. Then I will conquer London. Then I will conquer the world.
Because, of course, actually engaging in combat is beneath me, for I am Dio, spelled in all caps.
And at this point, Dio has also completely healed from his burns because he has been drinking the blood of young women.
He says he still has some on his like abs. And he's like, if once I am able to heal these last burns, I will no longer have any marks of my, failure or from JoJo.
Mm-hmm. The carriage in this tunnel, it suddenly gets stopped. Speedwagon goes to see what the problem is, and none of the horses have heads anymore, so that's a bit of a problem.
Horses are dead, Master Jostar. What?
And one of the heads has been forcibly shoved onto the neck of the carriage driver, so that explains why he wasn't answering. That solves one mystery. What just happened?
Then Zappelli, being like the only smart person in this trio for the remainder of this fight, basically goes,
yeah.
Stay away from those horses, because they're definitely dead. And then he gets too close to the horses, and you look down the neck, and Jack the Ripper, like, it's me!
It's me!
I'm
That's
confused.
how you make an entrance, folks.
Did he hide inside the horse after killing that in like the split second he had? Or
okay, so later on into the fight, it apparently is revealed how he was able to, disable the driver and the horses. And it still doesn't make any sense. But
I thought I missed that. And I was going off my personal theory that he must have been playing the long con and snuck into the horse earlier that night. And was hiding inside the horse.
Hiding inside a horse, puppeteering it?
Yes.
That's amazing. And I believe it.
But there are two horses.
He only needed one.
Needs to puppeteer one. He could just kill the other one after. I think there were also 4, weren't there? I don't know. It doesn't matter. The point is, Zombie Jack the Ripper is here, and he's gonna
Jack the Ripper loves to stab things.
Yeah, he really does.
Dude stabs himself through the face because he was getting bored.
Yeah, I can see why maybe Sam would enjoy this character.
Well, he probably wants to go on a date with him.
He's not a Russian assassin, though, so...
He only checks one box.
He does grow that sweet, villain beard upon being turned into a zombie.
That's true.
We'll have to wait for Sam's commentary of whether or not this would be an appropriate match.
This is all going to
I'm going to assume yes, without even confirming with him, so... We're going to assume that Jack the Ripper is Sam's waifu for this episode.
Nah, he's too large. I'm not into Barras. Also, screw all of you.
At this point, Zappelli shows the full power of a true Hamon master and handily clowns on... we start seeing some of the more ridiculous things that Hamon can do. He takes a sip of wine and exhales them as bladed discs that can cut through steel, I guess.
They're sharper than the knives that Jack the Ripper was keeping hidden in every single one of his muscle groups so that when he flexed, knives shot out.
Because that's his power. That's his thing. Oh my God, I love JoJo's. It's very much the case where, like, so much of this was, wow, it's a period piece. Okay, now we've got some supernatural stuff going on. Now you're at the bizarre adventure, folks. Now we're at the crazy nonsense. It only gets weirder from here. And Zappelli is, he could have very easily finished off Jack the Ripper, but at this point he's using this as a teaching method. Now, JoJo, I want you to finish him off and he hands him a glass of wine without spilling even a smidgen of this wine. If you spill any of it, I will abandon you. Because the Vikings were made by the North Wind.
He essentially takes the same teaching method Lord Jostar had, which is your child only grows through adversity.
Basically. Meanwhile, Jack the Ripper twists the sword in the ceiling and it opens a tunnel.
But the problem is that tunnel is on the tunnel's roof. The secret door goes up.
It doesn't make a lot of geometric sense. Hey, there's a night training hall.
There's like an Egyptian catacomb that we get told is a training hall for knights in the mountain above this tunnel, I guess. And
Okie doke.
Jonathan Jostar takes his glass of wine and lights a fire and walks through into the darkness and is then basically immediately attacked. And he's like, wait, no, the fire is giving me away, and puts the fire out. And after hiding again, goes on this long monologue about how, haha, without the fire, how am I supposed to find him? Meanwhile, Jack the Ripper is waiting on the other side going haha, the fool, he does not understand. My zombie powers allow me to sense him by his blood alone. It is as if he has a giant spotlight on him at all times. The fire was never necessary. I will wait for him to turn this corner and then I will kill him. And
he is 20 meters away. He is 10 meters away.
JoJo, looking down in pitch blackness, I guess, at the wine, notices the ripple in the wine glass and goes, wait, the ripple through the wine is the ripple in my arms, is the ripple in my cells, is the ripple of the earth. I can sense vibrations. I know where people are. I can also sense life force.
Ripple!
It's the seismic sense from Avatar, some 30 years before.
Mm-hmm. And essentially he goes, he's on the other side of this wall. I'll punch it with my ripple punch, which punches through the wall and attacks only him. And we get this great panel of him come on, go around the corner. Oh no! As he's then Uzamaki'd into a pile of goop. Because whenever zombies are hit by Hamon in this, they just melt.
There's a bit of a logic leap here, but it's JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, so bear with me a moment. The light of the sun gives power to the air that you breathe, and that air goes through is what powers the cells in your body. So if you're using Hamon energy, you are redirecting the power of the sun, and the sun burns vampires to nothing. So the ripple is punching with the sun. Is the reason why he goops.
Yeah, no, I get that. That is enough for me to go sure, that works. That's an explanation, I guess. But JoJo passed his test. He did not spill a single drop of wine. And then
I won't have to disown him because wine's expensive.
Get to the other side of the tunnel, and then rather than stay on the road, they're nope, we're gonna take the long way around.
Well, that's where the next fight scene is. Come on.
I'm trying to remember why they did what they did, but then they end up just next to a lake for some reason. But then they get mugged by a child who, I'm sorry, we skipped my favorite part where a Speedwagon wants to learn Hamon. Zappelli goes, I couldn't teach you Hamon. Also, the fact JoJo over there is so good at it is because every second he is standing, he is breathing in an incredibly difficult way, which teaches him and increases his natural energy. He is a natural gifted talent that I could not dream for in a million years. I was trained by a master of many decades for 5 solid years to even get where I am. I am not a master. I cannot teach you with that level you need. And then Speedwagon just goes, yeah, but we're fighting like vampires and zombies. I'm kind of wondering what else I'm supposed to do here. And then Zeppeli literally stops for a second, like, no, you're right. We should probably do something about that. Maybe I could just try poking your diaphragm. This is going to hurt. And then punches him in the gut. And then we get a great panel of just like, oh, I made a mistake. I missed. I think I just stabbed you. Oh,
you son of a bitch.
Hey, he warned him. He said, I'm not a master. I just kind of sorry.
Yeah, I love the explanation from Zeppeli to Speedwagon is your backstory isn't tragic enough.
You are not an anime protagonist.
That's essentially what it is you don't have the anime protagonist powers, but like barely meta contextualized.
Well, what he literally says is JoJo has a innate motivation, but like what that translates to outside of the context of in-universe story is you're not the protagonist, so no, you don't get the special powers. It's really blatant. It's
essentially what happens too, because
JoJo's is a spectacular parody.
Yep, and in this same scene, they get their bag stolen by a child. Who he must have jumped off a cliff. He jumped off a cliff with a rope that takes him across the lake they're on. Like where is this rope connected?
It's actually a river.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know how any of this works.
It doesn't matter. It won't matter in like 2 seconds when we reveal what this whole thing is. But it's literally an excuse for Zeppeli to go, hold on, let me pose cool a few times, because right here is when the posing gets to be like what this thing's bread and butter is, because people are posing every single panel now. And Zeppeli goes, hold on, let me shake my arms at the right movement so I can ripple the water. And then like we get this intricate geometric pattern as the ripple goes across the water, and Zeppeli just starts running across the water, and everyone's like, he can walk on water. And then JoJo jumps on the water, and he's down, like he's going like ankle deep, but he's still running on the water. And then Speedwagon jumps in the water and immediately sinks down to his head.
And he just has the most furious look on his face, is just like it's from his nose up is above the water, and he just looks so mad.
And in case you at this point haven't gotten used to how they're doing these insane things just being described as Hamon, deal with it. Like one of JoJo's signature moves at this point is the zoom punch, where he dislocates his arm so that his ligaments aren't connected, so his punch can stretch, and he's using Hamon to ignore the pain and then heal up afterwards. And I'm just wondering, how does that add extra force to the punch, though? Because they're like, you're slapping someone with a wet noodle then, apparently, but whatever. Hamon.
You're transferring the power of Hamon into them.
Sure.
Sure, why not? They catch the kid.
Yeah, they do. And they go like, wait, no child acts like this. He's being hypnotized? But who could possibly hypnotize? And then amongst the crowd of graveyards they're at, zombies start rising, and from the cliff we go, but JoJo, didn't you know? Me, Dio, I can hypnotize.
I can just do that. And we are left on the cliffhanger of Dio has returned. A literal cliffhanger because he is on the top of a cliff.
We do get a great like full chapter of Dio on the cliff arguing with Zeppeli, because we needed that scene. Like, I only bring this up because this has one of my favorite quotes from JoJo's that I've actually seen in other things before I saw in JoJo's. Zeppeli asks him, how many people did you have to kill to heal those injuries you sustained? And Dio just matter-of-factly goes, do you remember how many slices of bread you've eaten in your life?
Yeah.
It's that right level of hamminess, too, because that line is hammy. But, like, it's also essentially, like...
It's also horrifying.
Yeah, because at this point, Dio has fully renounced his humanity. He is absolutely not a human being because he is an apex predator.
Humans are pieces of food to him.
Yeah, you're prey. Like, you eat to heal your injuries. Do you remember how many pieces of bread you had to eat to heal? Like, no. I don't keep track of that.
It is beneath me.
We end on what is presumably because at the end of that, Zappelli gets hit once, and then JoJo steps up like, no, I'll fight Dio. And then that's the end of our reading. Let's bring this home with the discussion topics.
So favorite characters for everybody.
I mean, Matt here, I'll go first. I don't know how you can read this and not say Dio. Like,
I can.
Dio is the entire feeling of this. Like I said earlier, like this is basically Dio's bizarre adventure.
Yeah.
Because like JoJo is reacting to him. And in fact, Dio gets enough monologues that he essentially gets 50% of the screen time.
For me, basically where I'm coming from is, yeah, Dio, how can you not? He's such a good villain, you know, like he's so eminently hateable. I really like one of the things I really like about him is that if he wasn't so evil, he'd be the protagonist. So like there's layers to him. He has a really good Achilles heel in that his combination of arrogance and short temper can get the better of him. Like he's a character with actual depth. I never used to particularly care about Speedwagon, but Matt, you've actually made me really like Speedwagon a lot. Like he was always funny meme character, but he's definitely a favorite of mine now. And of course, JoJo's like he's got such a great journey. But like it's Dio, man. He is the centerpiece of this story. Everything comes back to his actions.
Okay, Jay. Who's your favorite character?
Hands down, Speedwagon.
That's fair.
Ooh, I mean, good choice.
Just because he's the most relatable character for me, I'm not that over the top, but it's just kind of like when you really... I saw him from a more level-headed where he really recognized the good in JoJo, and that's what he latched onto, because he himself admits that I'm a criminal. I steal from people. But he really latched on to, JoJo's not just some naive noble. Like, he genuinely believes what he's doing is for the best. He's genuinely a good person. And that's someone I want to be allied with. To me, that really speaks to his character. The fact that he really dedicates his life from here on out to supporting JoJo in any way possible. Because even though he's not able to contribute, forcefully, he still wants to be on the sideline. It's constantly asking, how can I help? What can I do? And, really dedicates himself to the cause. So
yeah,
I like him. He's a very good support character. And because he has that, because he comes from a place of disillusionment, I think. Well, not disillusionment. But
because he doesn't see the hope in humanity from Ogre Street, but once he meets JoJo, he changes.
Yes.
I'll jump in here and also give a honorable mention to Lord Jostar. I really enjoy his character arc in this.
Yeah.
Because we get to see his full character arc of you're right, I was too hard on JoJo, but also every time I saw what Dio was doing, I felt like I needed to push him because he is my son. Which fair. And in all fairness, we do skip 7 years where assumedly they have a much more healthy relationship. So
yeah, he is also a very strong supporting character. Like one of the cool things about JoJo's is there aren't really any bad characters, because I mentioned previously, for as little as Erina does, she's great too. So shout out to her as well. It's just this is a great series with a bunch of great characters. And it took a while to get to them, but a fair number of pretty serious fights. What was everybody's favorite fight?
That's a hard one. It would either have to be the fight at the Jostar mansion, or it would have to be Jack the Ripper when they're at the carriages. I would have to be one of those two. It's a very hard question to answer right off the top of my head. I'll go with the mansion.
Okay, cool. Matt here. I'll split mine in half too, because I like them for very different reasons. The Jack the Ripper fight, specifically the second part with JoJo, as opposed to Against the Pelly. I really enjoyed that. Like that's got like that like right level I like in a good shonen fight of like using your head and like counteracting things. That's just a legitimately good shonen fight. Whereas what I'll say is a joke is my actual favorite fight is Dio versus JoJo's boxing match. Because of just how handily Dio beats him and then immediately goes, "Aha, I'll teach you all how to beat him as well, but nobody tell him, for he is a tattletale who cannot keep a secret." And like the fact that he says that in the same breath, like I love that.
Right in front of JoJo as well.
Complete stranger, by the way. JoJo at least knows these people.
Yeah, JoJo knows these people. Dio is from out of town. For me, it's pretty solid because, like, I like a lot of the fights. I like, honestly, both ends of the Jack the Ripper fight, and a lot of JoJo and Dio's like childhood confrontations are really fun. But the thing for me that I really like is especially the back half of the mansion battle, because it's something that, and it's like to some extent, the rest of my knowledge of the franchise might be coloring this a bit. But the idea that Dio kept rising and rising and rising and reached above the level of everyone else, he's standing on the roof, and then a JoJo drags him back down into hell. He fights and he struggles, and he seems to have all the advantages, and he seems to win, and I'll survive while you die, and then he still, gets inevitably dragged back down. It has like goofy stuff like JoJo parkouring off of the broken spear and whatnot. So it's like, it's a good fight. But the thing I really like about it is it's one of the greatest examples of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, not just being a good parody, not just being funny, not just being hammy, but also just being really, really good literature. And I really love the metaphor of, like the Jostar mansion is burning down, and the wealth that's associated with that is something that Dio cared about, but JoJo only cares about his father who's gone. So, like JoJo isn't losing anything for the mansion burning down, but the wealth that Dio wished to obtain is now gone. There's so many layers to the mansion burning, meaning so much more than simply a house on fire is really clever, and just an example of the mad genius of Hirohiko Araki. Another thing that's worth touching on is this is a JoJo's reference. JoJo's is one of the most like referenced series of all time. One of the things that I always like to touch on whenever I'm talking about JoJo's is that Mother's Basement video I mentioned. He played clips of other anime referencing JoJo's, and the one that got me was there was a JoJo's reference in Pokemon. What do you guys think of like how like universal JoJo's is? Because like before any of us actually experienced it directly, we'd all seen the memes.
Jay here, I'll jump in first. Actually, I was not fully immersed in all the JoJo's memes. I had not heard of the series until a friend of mine, propositioned it at all. And even to this day, I don't really see too many. This might completely change after this episode. Maybe I'll be able to be like inundated, but I haven't really seen the JoJo's memes. I know I'll probably get some flack for that, but yeah, I haven't seen too many. I know they're out there. I don't get hit with them a lot.
You clearly don't talk to Sam enough.
That is true.
That was where a lot of my exposure came from, to be fair.
So there's a common denominator there.
But I'll also say, like, my main exposure to JoJo's, especially like as reference points, like not really so much from memes either. It's like literally from seeing like the JoJo's posing in like anime, where they'll do like the exaggerated poses as a reference. And like, as I said earlier, the amount of times I've heard the line, "How many pieces of bread have you eaten in your life?" Like that gets referenced a lot. Like that quote's in a lot of places. Like not even like directly referencing. Well, it is directly referencing JoJo's, but it's not like called out as a meme.
Yeah, it's being used as a literary reference, and that's sort of what I was kind of getting at with it. Because like one of the things that I've noticed is once I started getting into JoJo's, it's very much the case where JoJo's is a complete dynamo in Japan. You can't not know JoJo's in Japan. But like in the West, it's a lot less well known. And it's like, I started getting exposed to the memes when the anime came out and a lot of people were talking about it. But one of the things that sort of blew me away as I started to get to learn some of the JoJo stuff is, like I mentioned in the Yu-Gi-Oh episode, how there was that headband that I had never recognized before. JoJo's is something that like permeates all other anime. The big difference between, these two like parallel series in my mind, JoJo's and Dragon Ball, is that Dragon Ball got internationally famous, whereas JoJo got like baked into Japanese culture. When someone does an exaggerated pose, they're not just posing, it's a JoJo's pose. That's just that's something that's always stuck out in my mind as really interesting of how deeply it ingrained in Japanese culture.
Yeah, no, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is definitely a phenomenon. Like, it is impossible to escape, like, its grasp. Yeah, so I guess that wraps up us talking about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Man, hopefully Sam can be with us the next time, or we can read something else Sam enjoys next time he wants to take a vacation.
Read between the lines, Sam. No vacations.
We can take vacations, but you can't.
Aww.
As always, if you ever want to reach out to us, or in this case, send Jay JoJo's memes, we'd love to hear from you. Reach out at OverMangaCast on Twitter. If you ever want to comment on an episode or leave a review and you don't want to do that the normal podcast way for some reason, but always appreciate those 5 stars, feel free to reach out to us on YouTube. We've got all the episodes up there. I think they're on like a week delay. So if that's why this episode isn't there when you're listening to it, you know why. And then always Instagram, Facebook, you can reach out to us on there. But yeah, any reviews, feedback, always happy to hear from you guys. Or, just tell us we have bad opinions. Like, we'll get offended if that's what you want. And I'll tell you you're wrong. Because that's how opinions work, is people just shout that each other is wrong and no one tries to grow from them. That's what I've learned from being on the internet.
Alternatively, we could have a constructive discussion. That's also a thing that we could do. I mean, theoretically.
That's dumb, Jacob. You don't have those on the internet.
Yeah, okay, fair point. But yeah, engagement anyway, so.
Anyway, next week, with Sam being back with us, so we're going to give you the book listing. We are reading Platinum's End by the creators of Death Note, so that'll be exciting. Looking forward to that.
Yeah.
This is the opposite of JoJo's. I'd never heard of this until it was on the reading list, but looks like it'll be good. So
yeah, it's got an anime coming out in the fall. So dating the episode. Anyway, good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.